you would be interested to talk to Rob Davis, because I've heard you guys talk about woods and oaks and things like that a lot. And that guy, I learned so much just talking to him a few times about the oak. He would literally go to tree auctions, where he would go to an auction where you could look at the wood that was chopped down and you would buy a tree to turn into your barrel.
Wow.
It's like coming like November time and you got to walk around and find your Christmas tree.
That's right.
You got to go pick it out. Like, this one's going to taste good one day.
Throw it on top of your station wagon and take it off.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. I'm Kenny Coleman.
And Ryan Cecil here.
And we're going to be talking to somebody that, oddly enough, we go way back.
We do.
We go back to the 2018 time machine here. I'm actually knowing our guest. But I'm actually really excited to be able to talk about this brand because we talked about it, I don't know how many times on This Week in Bourbon, getting to understand a little bit more about the history and really its tie into music, because that's really what a lot of this is. And funny enough, our guest being from Memphis is huge capital of, music.
Blues.
The blues music anyway.
Yeah. We got to know this guy. I mean, it's crazy. He worked for the liquor store, Doc 52s, right? And
Dot's was the name of the store, and Dot 52 was the private label we started.
correct. That was the one that we talked about, reviewed, that led to our good friend Macaulay calling us and then led us down this path to start his brand. And now we're here at Whiskey Row recording and millions of dollars in debt later. So thanks, Ryan, for being the catalyst of that. But no, super excited. We've gotten to know Three Chord over the years through our good friend Ari Sussman. He's worked with them. And so excited to share their story and hear more about their story, because we know they have a ton of ties into the music artist world. And so excited to talk about it.
Yeah, then we'll definitely get into it. And they're going to be releasing and talking about some of the new packaging and design, everything that they are coming out with as well. So today on the show, we have Ryan Gill. He is the Director of Marketing and Development for Three Chord Bourbon. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hey guys, it's very much a full circle moment coming on this podcast. After, like you talked about, I was a thirsty retailer reaching out to you guys saying, please try my private label bourbon.
Yeah.
So
it's so funny because, our wives like to take the responsibility and the credit for where we are today, because they're like, if we would have never met and we would have had the derby party and we would have done this. And it's like, well, yeah, that was phase one, but really phase two, Ryan, this is all you, man. This is on you. It's like, you sent us that bottle and we talked about it on the podcast. And then all of a sudden now we're in Memphis selecting barrels. And that's how we meet you for the first time, was actually going down there and hanging out to release what became Pursuit Series.
Yeah, it's wild. Just seeing how far it's all come. So, and how different things are for both of us these days.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, let's kind of talk a little about your background and your history, because we had just kind of mentioned that you had started creating your own private label as part of Doc 52s, but kind of talk about, life before then and what made you get into the whiskey space in general.
Yeah, so I started off as a retailer when I was 20 years old. Started working part-time at a liquor store when I was also a concert promoter. So that's where the
For
music
36
side.
Mafia.
It was Juicy J and all them,
I think I did do a show for Da Mafia 6 at one point,
Oh, okay.
which was after
awesome.
after Juicy J left.
Oh,
It became
nice.
Da Mafia 6. So that was
I'm
interesting.
jealous.
Yeah. So yeah, they did a show with Jelly Roll as the opener, which no one knew who Jelly Roll was at the time. So
Oh, wow. It's insane because Jelly Roll is everywhere
Yeah,
now.
massive
right?
now.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, like charts wise.
Yeah. So I did that and ended up kind of doing both for a long time, working part-time as a liquor store employee and then, putting on concerts in Memphis. So I did that for a decade. And then at the time that I started wrapping up working in concerts, I got the opportunity to get promoted in the liquor stores and became a assistant GM and then GM and then running a couple of stores and opening a new store. And, I ended up 14 years doing that and just kind of had a love for it. I took the marketing and the curiosity about trends and learning things that I used in the concert promotion side, and really just transferred it over to whiskey and wine. And I started my education on the wine side, and then I think it gave a really good base for learning about whiskey. And so whiskey kind of became a passion after that.
So you were just an employee. Did you own the store?
So I was the GM for the last 8 years that I was there, and it was a store where the owners weren't in the store. So I was running everything.
You're basically
day to day.
100% doing everything.
Yeah.
So that's how things were at that store. So the two stores, it was the same family running it, and they were nice enough to let me just kind of do what I wanted over there. And so I ran with doing things like the private label. And
what spawned that of wanting to start a private label? Because we had talked about this on the podcast, and that was kind of the genesis of what it was that you were coming out with your own private label as a liquor store, and we talked about it saying, well, this is cool, but this isn't unique, because rewind a long time ago, this is what all stores were doing. Grocery stores, pharmacies, they were all coming out with their own private label whiskey, and you kind of revived that. So kind of talk about like what was the kind of like the genesis of like why you wanted to do it.
Yeah, honestly, it was another form of marketing for the stores, right? It was finding a way to get people into the store without having to do a large advertising budget or something like that. Like, I wanted to find ways to make our store a unique destination. So I actually did.
What was the store called, by the way? It was Dock 52, right?
So the first store was Southwind Wine and Spirits, and the second one was Doc's Wine, Spirits, and More. And we actually started wine first at Southwind, and went to California and Argentina and started doing these private labels, and just fell in love with the process, and it really took off for that store. And so as soon as we were able to, I wanted to move into private label whiskey, and kind of the funny backstory behind that was there was a company called Pyramid Vodka that was in Memphis that started, and I went to them and I said, "Hey, you guys have a still. Can you make some whiskey for me? Like, can we come up with the mash bill and everything? And this is a long-term play, planning on being around for a while.
This thing doesn't work."
They're like, this not enough. We don't know how to turn this thing on.
And so it was funny because they were making vodka, and they didn't know, they didn't know what else, but they were like, "We'll give this a shot." And then the company closed up before it ever started. And so when they went out of business, they actually ended up selling that facility to what ended up being McCulley's Group, which ended up being Blue Note Bourbon eventually. But before that, it was just a barrel brokerage and warehousing facility. And one of the people from Pyramid Vodka was a carryover to the new place. And so he called me up one day and said, "Hey, I know you wanted to do a whiskey. I've got a bunch of whiskey now.
Way more than we know what to do with."
Yeah. Do you want to come do something? And I was like, "Yes, let's do it." And so that became the start of the Dock 52. And, I just took it and ran with it. We, it was only available in 2 stores, and yet it was in Whiskey Advocate. It was in USA Today. You guys talked about it. We had some good success. So it became a nice little regional favorite. Whenever we would do a release, we'd have people drive from, 8-10 hours away to come pick up bottles. It was fascinating. It was just fun.
That's awesome. There were some really good barrels to pick from back then.
I remember doing some really old Dittle stuff at Cast Strength. And I remember somebody from Dittle coming in to the store one day and trying it and doing, "Wait, why did you get a higher score in Whiskey Advocate than anything we have? That's not fair." And this is before Dittle bottled and bond, and they got all their high scores. But
well, you got to be very picky about it, right? I mean, it's like a lot of those they're dumping hundreds of barrels at a time, and what we were doing, and you as well, is it's very cognizant, like it's very small and minute, so you've got to be very choosy about what you're doing.
Yeah, we started off doing 1 barrel at a time. Then we did a couple of small batches of 2-3 barrels. Then we started playing with finishes and just getting creative with it.
And so question is, because you were doing a private label wine and private label whiskey, which one's more difficult? Let's talk about from the production and then the selling aspect.
So probably the wine, because on the wine side, they're not used to doing such small lots. They're not used to selling by the barrel or anything like that, right? Like, the idea to get something custom done in the wine world was really difficult and really kind of out there.
You want like a couple hundred cases kind of thing?
Yeah.
Usually by the tote or tanker, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we actually ended up finding this winemaker that it was a winemaker and a wine broker that just were good friends, and we ended up becoming good customers of one of their brands. And we started talking, and we were like, you do all these small lots of things. It was a wine called Treasure Hunter, and their whole thing was doing these small lots of highly rated wines, but not telling where it came from. Basically, it was a whole treasure thing, right? That was the theme. Like, well, you're already doing these small lots. Why don't we just get you to do a small lot for us? And that was how that whole concept started and carried over.
Where were you sourcing the wine from?
Those were coming from different parts of California.
Okay.
And
so you weren't trying to like pawn on, I'm not to say it's like, trying to sell Tennessee wine and been like, no, I promise it's good. Like, yeah.
No, we were sourcing
trying
from,
to compete with Boone's Farm.
Yeah.
No, we literally went out to like the Sonoma wine auctions and things like that, and we bought a single barrel of Jordan
Wow.
Cab that was hand selected by Rob Davis and things like that. We got really intense into it.
Think about getting back into it. Wine prices are super cheap on the bulk market right now. It's crazy.
Yeah,
they're like giving away that stuff now.
Yeah, it's crazy now. And you would be interested to talk to Rob Davis, because I've heard you guys talk about woods and oats and things like that a lot, and that guy, I learned so much just talking to him a few times about the oat. He would literally go to tree auctions, where he would go to an auction where you could look at the wood that was chopped down, and you would buy a tree to turn into your barrel.
Wow.
It's like coming like November time and you got to walk around and find your Christmas tree.
That's right.
You got to go pick it out. Like, this one's going to taste good one day.
Throw it on top of your station wagon and take it off.
Is this going to fit in the family room?
Yeah.
Or no, what he say is like, it's going in their family room, Russ. Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's kind of move the story forward a little bit. Kind of talk about, life after the liquor store. What made you want to start looking for that next change and the next evolution in your career?
Yeah. So honestly, I wasn't looking. It was funny. So Three Chord started off as a brand only in a couple of states, and they ended up tied in with an investor in Memphis. And so they were doing an event in Memphis to kind of kick off, and the national sales director at the time came into my store, because we were one of the top whiskey stores in the market. And so he came by and he was pitching me Three Chord. I tasted through everything and gave him my honest opinion and was like, look, this is good. This should probably be priced higher. This should be priced lower. I'm just going to give you my honest opinion. And our store carried, we had an entire wall of whiskey. We tried to jump on really early on to the whiskey train because we liked it. We were passionate for it. And, he appreciated the honesty, and, we bought everything and said, look, we're going to try everything. We liked it. But just giving you our honest opinions on things. And, that was the end of it. And then 2 days later, he calls me and he says, hey, I liked what you said. I liked that you were honest. And I started talking to the sales rep that was driving him around, and he said, and he was telling me all about all of your music ties. And so this guy calls me and starts asking me about not my experience in the whiskey and wine industry, but my experience in the music industry. I was like, where's this going?
Let me tell you about Project Pat.
So he offered me a job, and I was like, well, okay. Been with the same family of owners for 14 years. What, things are steady.
Show me the money.
Yeah. Wasn't really sure. And, he said, okay, I think we're going to have something open up here soon. And, he called me back and was like, all right, it's going to be a couple months. And, they ended up hiring somebody else in the market. And then that person, something happened within a week, like before they even really started. And he calls me up like the week before Thanksgiving, which in the wine, like in the liquor
And you're like,
stores,
worst time ever.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, can you start like now?"
You're
It's
like, you got to get back to me in
yeah.
maybe January. Yeah.
So I actually, it was funny. They already had like a general sales meeting scheduled with the distributor there, and they had no one to do it. And so somebody flew down to do it, and he was not going to be in the market or anything. Like he was fairly new. And while I was working at the liquor store, I also went and did the general sales meeting, like while I was working off my 2 or 3 weeks notice there. So already obviously had the relationship with all the sales guys, and so it was a nice transition. But when I started looking at it and considering if I would do it, I was like, okay, if I was ever going to leave for anything, it made sense it would be a company that's all about music and whiskey, right?
Yeah.
Like those have been my two passions. Those are the two things that I feel like I enjoy the most, and am pretty good at working in those industries. And so, all right, let's take a leap of faith here. And here I am, almost 6 years later.
For those that don't know, can you give like kind of the genesis of Three Chord and what they're about, and so they kind of understand when you say music and whiskey?
Yeah.
Can you help explain that for folks?
Yeah. So the company's always been about music and whiskey, and the idea was, it was tying those two things together. But the problem was when it started as a bourbon brand that just had some whiskey ties, right? Like, so the founder of the company, longtime musician, he's rock and roll Hall of Famer, but not a celebrity in any way.
Neil Giraldo is who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, but he's still out there touring, things like that. But, he wanted to start this whiskey company. And, one thing that brought him to it was he loved a sense of community. That was when he was growing up. He grew up in a big Sicilian family, and he always had these family gatherings where everybody was playing music and drinking and having fun. And, he actually started music because he started playing music at these family gatherings. Like that was how he got his beginning. And he loved the sense of community around those things. And so he started being a musician, did that for a long time, loved that sense of community, and then decided to slow down on the touring and everything a handful of years ago, and said, okay, well, I loved that sense of community. Let's pick up my second chapter with something that I also think of as that sense of community, which is the whiskey industry. That was something that he just always put together. And, I think very rightfully so, because the whiskey industry, my favorite part of it is also that sense of community. You always hear stories of brands helping each other out. And hey, look at you guys. Like you obviously have your own brand, but you're steadily talking to people like me.
We try. Yeah. I mean, that's the goal.
We're
of
just trying to
pursuit,
steal all
right?
your secrets.
Yeah,
No,
there
I'm
you go. We try to siphon off everything, but no, it really is. It's about finding the connection between people and the brands that they see all the time, and that's really what Bourbon Pursuit's all about. Is making sure that we build the community, we build the connection, because it's never been about us. It's been about this broader industry and really putting a spotlight on it. And now you're bringing something that's very new to this. The other thing that I kind of want to touch on is I don't think we really touched on your background with music. I mean, you said you were a music promoter, but kind of talking a little bit more in depth of like what that meant and inroads you made, or do you know who shot Tupac? Like, do you know where is this going?
So I started off doing benefit concerts when I was 18 years old for different charities. When I was junior in high school, I started going to these local concerts and hanging out with people that were in bands. And I always played sports. I never had time to spend to actually learn an instrument or anything like that. And so I just jumped straight into the business side of things and started putting these things on to, like I said, raise money for charity. And then I just started having people ask me to put on concerts for them. And I just kind of had a knack for marketing. So I started with that. But I mean, from the very beginning, did the whole process from booking the bands to setting the guarantees, paying them out, promoting the show, the entire process, renting out the venues. So I ended up doing that for about a decade. And I worked in probably 15 different venues across Memphis because it was impossible for venues to stay open. And it's a tough market. And I worked with everybody from, starting off early on with, bands like Paramore and A Day to Remember, and then working up to Childish Gambino and Ted Nugent and Avenged Sevenfold, things like that.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. Yeah, that's you cross the spectrum right there of different
Yeah.
things.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Ted Nugent. I'm jealous. I love Ted Nugent.
It was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Paramore's got one of the the best soundtracks that's out. It's like making a comeback right now on TikTok and everything.
Yeah, my 4-year-old loves Paramore.
Yeah, see. So I guess kind of dive in. Let's talk a little more about like the whiskey and sort of like where does this chasm cross, right? Where it talks about the music and the whiskey. I mean, we talk about the story and kind of how it all comes together, but in your opinion, like where does the harmonization really come where these two really intertwine?
Yeah, so there's a lot, and that's kind of what led us to this. So one thing for me that I always tie them together with is memories. Like I love the idea of tying moments and people with music or whiskey. Like I was really big when I was putting on concerts. I would always tie people to like, okay, I know that person is a huge fan of this band or this song, or, I remember being at this event and this person screaming really loud and loving it. And so when I saw people, I equated them with a certain band, a certain song, things like that. Whiskey's so similar. I think of who shared this product with me, who told me about this product. I was reading an interview recently with an artist that we're talking to, and they were asked, "What were you drinking in the studio?" And he said, "Well, I was drinking Woodford Reserve while I was recording because I had a friend that passed away that he had turned me on to Woodford, and so when I was in the studio, it was like having a piece of him there with me. It was, that was my drink of choice in the studio. It's like, man, that's exactly what I got from music is also what I get from whiskey. And so I love the idea of pairing those things together.
I love it. We'll kind of talk about what you have in front of us too. You poured us something that was unlabeled, which we always appreciate because it's the unicorn or unicorns. But talk about what the old packaging versus new packaging and sort of how that evolution's happening too.
Yeah. So we started off doing what most brands do, going to, branding agency, somebody to help you do the initial designs, things like that. Right. This was 9 years ago, something like that. And, they put bourbon first. It was very much bourbon first. This is a bourbon package, but here's a little nod to the music side, right? If you think back 9 years ago, there was a lot less competition. We'll start with that. But number two, everyone was trying to chase after the legacy brands, right? Nobody was trying to do something different, really. Everybody was trying to fit in at the moment. That was the big thing back then. So we went down that path. We did that for the last several years. And then a couple of years ago, we started this backstage series where we're doing these collaborations with artists. And we started to see just the engagement, the passion, the reorders, and just people really connecting with the products. And we were like, man, that's what we wanted to do from the beginning.
And there's a lot more artistry that came out of it because the bands had a say in what the labels looked like and how they could put their own spin on it. That makes it truly something that their fans want.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we did these custom labels, custom whiskeys, and as we did that, we worked with a designer that we would work together with the band's team and our designer. We found this guy in Memphis that did concert posters, and
which is an art in itself, by the way.
I just seen them. I was like, man, I love this guy's artwork. I love what he's doing. I wonder if he could make a whiskey label. And so we gave him a shot with these backstage series. And as we were seeing that, we were like, man, that's who we are. And maybe we should open ourselves up a little bit more to going down that pathway. And so over the last couple of years, it started, kind of working our heads, okay, maybe we can start to be a little bit more music forward because, honestly, if you saw our product on the shelf before, it fit in with the other bourbons on the shelf and it had the name Three Chord, but a lot of people don't even know what Three Chord is. And, it it just didn't jump off that it was music related for a lot of people. So we said, let's start down that pathway. We immediately also started talking to another branding agencies and said, give us some advice, give us what you think. And all of them did the same thing they did before, which was try to make us look like every other bourbon and then just throw on like some guitar strings or something like that. Like it was either way too subtle or way too cheesy. Yeah, there was no in the middle. And so Michael, who is now our CEO, was our director of marketing before. Ari, who you mentioned before, and myself just kind of formed this little triad where we started talking to each other all the time about what we wanted the brand to be and what we were passionate about it. I mean, our company, everybody is kind of drawn together by whiskey and music. So, the founders, longtime musicians, still touring. The new CEO, he's been a longtime singer. He still does like lounge singing gigs on the weekends. Our director of sales is in a band. I was the promoter. I mean, we all are really tied together by this love of music and whiskey.
I can play a mean triangle if you need somebody to join a band for
I can do a recorder. Hot cross buns.
I was like, hot cross buns it out for us. All
Yeah.
right.
Still don't know why everyone learned that.
I do have
right?
DJ equipment though. Yeah. Well, you bring up Ari, and Ari seems to be very passionate, and rightfully so. He's very good at finding like these small niche audiences that like are super passionate, really get behind a product. And like, obviously y'all have collabed with a bunch of different artists. What attracts you to these artists, and like or do they seek you out? Do you seek them out? What is kind of like your all's process? Like, all right, this is someone we think is interesting and we want to collaborate. And once they get involved, how involved are they? I know you said they're part of the artwork. Are they part of the whiskey creation or whatnot? Just walk through that process.
Yeah, so it's been both. So it started off as me reaching out to people that I had worked with in my promoter life, and managers and bands I'd worked with previously, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. We had other bands started reaching out to us, and it became, look, we're the guys that you can go to that maybe you're not headlining arenas, you're not playing sold out shows on Broadway in Nashville,
but you got a cult following,
but
right?
you have a loyal following, and
but
so
you're filling up the ramen.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to work with those artists that maybe wouldn't start their own brand, but we wanted to give them an opportunity. So, we were large enough that we could offer them good distribution, but small enough that we could do these custom things. We worked really closely on D2C with Mash Networks, and we've really tied in with them to make sure that we can do this special process that gets the product out to all the band's fans around the country. That concept wouldn't have worked 5-6 years ago, right? Like before D2C became a real option, that
you got to go get it at Doc's liquor store. Yeah. That's the only place you can get it.
Exactly. And everybody's, following is so spread out, right? Like, if a band is doing, 1,000, 2,000 people a night, they're a good sized band, but that's 1,000, 2,000 in each market, and it's spread around the country. So,
right. Whereas in the old mall, you had to spray and pray that you could find them.
Yeah. And which is impossible. It's such a small audience to capture. Like, you're going to really go through the effort to try to appeal to 1,000 people in a city. No, absolutely not. That's crazy. So we started this process, and what we did was we would actually offer two options for the artists. So they could either be a part of the blending, or we could create a handful of blends after a conversation with them and then let them taste through, give some feedback, and go from there. But every one of the artists and their teams are involved in the process. They're involved in tasting, picking the blend. Some of them really get involved. Under Oath, for example, Aaron, I know a lot of people in Kentucky know him because I found out that when he comes up here, he just hits up all the liquor stores and Kroger and
good for him.
Chris is fix.
So Chris actually told me recently, he was like, I first got introduced to you guys because Aaron gave me a bottle of their blend. It's like, that's so funny. So, he told me, he was like, man, I've been doing music. He's been in a band for 25 years, multiple gold albums, stuff like that. And he's like, I think I love bourbon as much as I love music.
Love it.
And so he really got into doing the blend and really getting into the whole process. So that was fun. But it's just different levels for different artists, depending on their interest.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too, because, a lot of music artists, they're not to say lack of a better term, but for the longest time, it's just like ripping Jack Daniels on stage, right? Are you going through an educational series with a lot of these artists that are going, wow, I didn't really know what went into this craft, or they're just now understanding it? Or are they coming into it going like, no, I really love bourbon. I've got 50 bottles at home and I want to do this with you. What's the kind of like response you get from some of these artists?
Yeah, it's a total mix between those two things. I'd say almost 50-50. We
want to do it, but we love drinking and we just don't know what the hell we're doing here.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely get that, and it's people saying like, "I love rye. I don't know why. Like I drink this product, but I don't know anything about it. I just think it tastes good. How do you teach me about how to get that product? How do we create something with a similar flavor profile, things like that? It's that process, it's that education, and they enjoy it. I mean, one thing that's been fascinating is there's been a couple of artists that are like, man, I just really drink stuff that smells good. They're like, that's a big
don't
thing
we
to
all
me. They're like, that's what I think of when I think of, like, they're like, I drink whiskey, and that's the first thing I think of is how it smells. And so so we're like, all right, let's blend to that. Let's start thinking about things that add some nice aromas, doing some cherry bounce finishes and unique things like that to add that aroma for them.
Yeah, being an NDP, I'm assuming you all have kind of stocks from all over, and this and that, which is great for an artist that's wanting to create something interesting, unique. And so what kind of obviously, don't disclose like distilleries or whatever, but what kind of library of whiskey, that, or if you can disclose that, that you can, what your products are made out of.
Yeah. So we,
that was a deep breath there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we obviously have a wide variety of stock. One thing when we started was blending, especially blending from several different distilleries, was not the norm, right? 7, 8, 9 years ago, that was a handful of guys that were doing that. And so we started stocking up on all these different distilleries, different states, different ages, things like that. And so we still have that. We have stuff from all these different places, high end, low end, different mash bills, different, everything. And, so we are able to really listen to the artists and hear them out when they tell us like, okay, these are the, we'll have a lot of them that just take a picture of their whiskey shelf at their house. And they're like, this is the stuff I'm drinking.
I just want like, caramel.
Go.
So yeah, it's like,
it's all fireball and screwball, right? Yeah.
It's like, all right, Ari, good luck.
Yeah. So do they work hand in hand with Ari on all these?
Yeah. So Ari and Ari's assistant, blender, I guess you would call him. He's our production manager, a guy named Cars Peterson. But he's the one that gets his hands dirty and does the actual blending, bottling, and all that kind of stuff. And Ari's the nice artistic guy that comes up with the flavor profiles and all that.
Yeah. And so and we're all just talking about like the artist release, right?
Yes.
How many of those did you do so far?
We've worked with 17 bands in the last couple of years.
Okay. And are these a couple barrels in size that we're doing here? Like
no. This is usually ranging from 200 cases to 1,200 cases.
Okay.
Just depending on the artists that we're working with. Yeah. One thing that we really learned and kind of led us down this path was it's not about working with the artists that have the most Spotify plays or the biggest TikTok or Instagram following or anything like that. It was finding those artists that have like a real connection with their audience. We had one artist that, they outsold artists that were probably 10 times as large as they were by any metric. But that band, their fans had their names tattooed on them and stuff. Like it was hardcore following wherever they went. People traveled from all over to see them whenever they played. And so they sold a lot of whiskey, totally unexpected to us because we were just looking at the metrics that you would look at. And so when we started this rebrand process, we were thinking, okay, how do we find those passionate people? How do you identify that? Is it, ticket sales? Well, concert ticket sales, it's tough because it skews due to age and things like that. Is it merchandise? Well, merchandise also a lot of times skews because of live performances. What is it? Is it albums? Well, there's so much streaming these days. And so
it sounds like you don't have a metric in mind. You're just like, you sound good.
You got to let him get to his point.
So what we came to was vinyl records.
What?
And
really?
Yeah, it was fascinating because we got to that and we're like, man, people that are willing to spend money on a recorded piece of music, they don't have to. You can go stream that artist. You're literally choosing to pay them for something that you don't have to, because you're that passionate about the artistry, about the music, about the band, about the packaging, all of that kind of stuff. And we're like, man, that's what we want. We want to make that connection. And so we started looking at it, and this whole process, what's been fascinating has been, we'll come up with an idea and then we'll start looking at the data to back it up. And it's like, oh my God, we're onto something. Like it's,
that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Album sales have grown an incredible amount in the last 15 years. It is crazy now.
I know. We have a vinyl player at my house now.
Yeah, you got Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift just came out with her new one, and that's what was all on an orange glitter crush vinyl. So I get it.
We were joking yesterday because Taylor Swift, she announced that she's going to do a cassette tape version of the new album.
I can't do it.
Those are coming back.
I was like, you have to go to Goodwill or because you don't have Radio Shacks anymore. Where are you going to go find a cassette player?
So if you look at our bottles lined up on the sides.
Oh, they're like the old cassette decks. No way. I can see it now. How about here? Show the camera. There we go. Yeah, it'll pan over to you in a second. That's really cool.
So that was one of the things that we looked at. Just trying to.
And the front's the size of like a CD cover.
Yeah, and that was what we when we started thinking about. We're like, okay, that's a big bottle, guys. Like, it's a big wide bottle on a
big
shelf.
Canvas.
And so we're like, what could we put on the side to make it interesting? And when we were starting to think about all these things, that was what we came to was, and it would be really cool if you could stack them up and make it look like the old cassette tapes.
That's pretty cool.
So, now Taylor Swift's doing it.
Well, a lot of my cassette tapes I had to hide from my parents
because
under the bed.
Mine was Crisscross. That was like one of the first ones I ever had.
Yeah, Crisscross was one of them. Then no, it was a CD.
What was your first CD?
I think it was Bush.
Bush?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was Bush, and then Rage Against the Machine. I can't remember that one. It was the yellow one, but I remember I had to hide it from my parents because they were like, it curses, and they broke my first one, and then I was like,
I'll go get another
went
one.
to whatever.
They made more.
Was it Camelot or whatever the CD store was?
The buy sell trade one.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to.
What was your first CD?
First CD. I started with all the stuff that was on TRL, right? I like those. Those like, what was those clubs that like you pay $1 and you get a ton of like a subscription.
$1, CD a month or whatever. It is.
Something
maybe
ridiculous.
That was the Camelot Club.
Yeah,
right? Or no, Columbia.
I was like
Columbia. There you go.
Yeah. I was like Camelot Club sounds like something else there, Ryan.
That's a club in Memphis.
So yeah, I probably started with like Hanson or something like
Hanson.
that. But
mine was Shaq Diesel.
Oh,
Shaq
I actually had Shaq Diesel in a cassette. I remember that.
Shaq Diesel. That's what led you to your love of electronic?
Maybe. Because the funny thing is he's still doing it today and like he headlines shows. That's crazy.
That is crazy. Yeah, I wish we could work out something with some electronic artists, but they're not really seen together with drinking necessarily.
I've had only
you gotta get vapes on them.
Most of them are marijuana and weed users, so yeah, I get it.
I built a couple of shows for Sonny Moore when he was doing his between From First to Last and Skrillex.
Oh, nice.
He was doing solo acoustic shows and stuff. And
really?
DJ stuff. And there was like nobody there.
I know Skrillex.
Yeah, there's nothing bigger, right?
Yeah.
So amazing.
So talk about your other products, because I assume y'all still have like your, kind of more available shelf ready, type of products.
So this is it now. So
you're strictly going to this now.
Yeah. So we transitioned away from that. We said, okay, let's just go all out. We said, look, if we're passionate about music and whiskey, why should we make a product that only shows one of those two things and then the other is kind of in the background? Like let's lean all in. And so we started working on this. We came up with that final concept. We liked that idea, and making all these look like album covers. And one thing that's, talking back to previous guests of y'all's, Aaron and Steve, the brand mysticism.
Yes.
Creating the brain.
That's a great book.
I think I literally texted y'all's podcast with them to our whole team, all the execs and founders and all of that, because I was like, this is what we need to be doing better. Because
it makes sense, because you don't have to like go and
don't
educate.
Make it so direct.
Well, you don't have to go and educate people on a story, of Three Chord. You already have a story and connection with the band and their fans that they already know, and you don't have to go like preach that and like sell it to people that are like, I don't know who the hell you are. But it kind of reminds me of like, not saying like a licensing deal, but saying like you get a big brand that you do a bourbon with, and you can tie that brand to. You don't have to go educate. You already have like a built-in fan base around that. So it's very smart.
So we're doing that with the Bat Stage series. But one thing that we saw was, we wanted to have that same level of passion with our core products, but we didn't want it to be just the big name artist or anything like that. We wanted to find something kind of unique to tie to. So we started looking back, and this goes back to that, peeling back the layers of the onion, right? Like it was, you need to see something that's visually appealing on the shelf to start with, right? Well, you look at these, and first thing is it's these album cover designs. They're an ode back to old 50s Blue Note Records album covers that, they all had this, unique typography and negative space and a picture of some sort. And we said, well,
a lot of it just looks like, real rock and roll is what it looks like, to be honest with you.
So we were like, okay, let's think of the imagery that we would associate here. And we said, let's not worry about who the artist is. Let's just find images that look really cool, because we want to be associated with that moment. So we started looking for images that really made us feel something and made us, think, okay, if I was at that show, I would definitely have that memory burnt into my head. Like this one, for example, flip side. So you've got Guitar Shorty. Most people in the mainstream have no clue who Guitar Shorty is. This is, he's literally standing on his head playing the guitar. As we found these images, we then started looking back to who the artists were, and we found really unique, cool stories behind him. So, he inspired Jimi Hendrix. Bob Dylan had a quote about how Guitar Shorty played the guitar with everything but his hands. The one that you've got there, the Hard Pressed, that's got Cordell Jackson on it. So Cordell Jackson,
I saw his in Columbia, which got me excited.
So
I was going to say Hard Pressed. I figured it'd be like pressed vinyl is what it's called.
And it says distilled by Tennessee Distilling Group. That's awesome. You can disclose that.
Yeah. So and that's
we're
why
big fans of TDG.
That's why it's bottled in bond.
Yeah.
So yeah, Cordell Jackson. She in the 1920s wanted to be part of the Memphis music scene with Sun and Stats and things like that, and couldn't get on with him. She was a woman, and it just, they wanted her to work with other people, and so she decided, what, I'm just going to do this on my own, and so she was the first woman to start her own record label. She produced her own albums, did all this stuff on her own. And so there are really cool stories. She ended up being known later in the 90s as the Rockin' Granny, which is where this picture comes from. She was like in her 70s, rocking on stage in like a ball gown playing guitar. She ended up going on Letterman, and she had a Super Bowl commercial and all sorts of stuff. But, we had no idea when we found that picture. We just thought it was a really cool, memorable image. And so that was kind of the whole concept with that. And, even little things like if you pick up the bottle, you feel it right around it.
You can see the circle. You can feel the circle.
Yeah. So you can feel the circle, like if there was an album behind it. There's things like that. One thing that we talked about going back to, brand science and things like that, you're 30% more likely to buy something once it's in your hands, once you're holding it, right? So if you hold it for longer, that number goes up. So if you hold it for 30 seconds at least, it goes up to almost 60% more likely. Well, if you look at the back of our bottle, we've got this grab a bottle and press play QR code. So you scan that, and it's already talking for about a minute about each of the products. Just
That's cool.
overlaid with some music. We've got a personal, a proprietary music player, media player that we've created that just looks interesting. And we're also using that for things like sweepstakes. Like we're doing something with Victrola Records, the record player company, where starting out, you'll be able to grab a bottle, press play on the back, and be entered for $1,000 record player. Things like that.
That's
Nice.
awesome. That TDG is so good.
It
Oh my
is.
gosh.
Well, that's what I was. We've been talking about story a lot, and I think a lot of whiskey geeks, and even Fred Minnick says himself, it's like, story, but is the whiskey any good?
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the whiskey that goes into this, because that's ultimately what fans want to know about. I'm actually on, I think you handed us one that was unlabeled, which was the first one. The second one I had
was the Riot.
Strange Love.
which was I have the Strange Collab in my hand right now. I think it was that one over there was Riot.
Oh, right.
The double barrel or double
yeah.
bonded,
That's-
something like that.
Yeah, double bonded rye. That was an interesting one.
Yeah,
So,
I thought it was a rye.
so we actually, this is the first bottle labeled as a double bonded rye, which it's actually a blend of 2 bottled and bond ryes from 2 different distilleries. And somehow that got the
Got
A-OK.
approved? No, that's
And
Somebody was napping that day.
we thought the bottled and bond, or we thought the double bonded was a unique term, and the bottled and bond was also approved as long as we put the DSP numbers
For both of them
on the back. That was something that we love to be transparent. We have always wanted to be as transparent as possible with the stuff. That's one thing I really applaud you guys for as well on your blends, being transparent with where things are coming from. We try to put as much information as we can on there.
Gosh, that TDG is good.
It is all about the whiskey, right? Like the brand, the branding can be whatever, but the whiskey's got to be good. And that was the thing. We always feel like we've done a pretty good job with the whiskey. We've had like the honey toasted was in Breaking Bourbons.
You've had so many good
top
whiskeys
American
over the years.
whiskeys,
Yeah.
and like Fred, the whiskey drummer, had it on Fred's, finalist for Whiskey of the Year a few years ago, and Whiskey Advocate, we were like the top ranked bourbon for one of their issues, things like that. We've gotten some really good reviews and put out good stuff. We feel like we can do good with that side, but we just needed something to make people pick up the bottle off the shelf from the very beginning. So, that's what
you can have great whiskey, but you have to have the brand that follows it up.
Yeah. The whole idea of a rebrand, it's changing what the customer sees, but not what you are. Right. So we changed up what they're seeing, but it's who we have been all along, which is people that make good whiskey at good prices and have ties to music, love music. And like I said, we just want to be a tool for those moments that we talked about earlier, where people are, getting together, making memories, or even sitting alone and pouring some whiskey and putting on a vinyl.
I see it on your shirt. It says "Live loud and sip slow." So can you break that down?
We have a few little marketing slogans that we thought were appropriate. So live loud and sip slow. Turn it up, pour it down. Grab a bottle and press play. Things like that. Just trying to tie those things together, like drinking whiskey, listening to music, and living a certain way that you take the time to enjoy things. Neil, our founder, has always said, respect the moment. That was a big thing that he's said forever to us. And, we had to really define, like, what does that mean to us? And, one of the things for me was always, okay, that's that moment of stopping and enjoying things and remembering and making memories, so we wanted to work harder to make something that people could use for those connections.
I know Ari has his fingers all over it because he's a very romantic and very good storyteller, and I can tell he's had his impact on some of this too. Is that true?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, like I said, it was me, Ari, and Michael, the CEO. We the three of us were on calls every day just for basically a year, just trying to build this out. And what was interesting was once we started down this path, it was like the ideas just flowed, like, because it's something that we're all passionate about. We all love music, we all love whiskey, and so the stories and the ideas and everything that came from it was like, man, it's just natural. It just feels right. Like having the back labels look kind of like liner notes on a back of an album and things like that. Like the cassette tapes, the feeling the record, like all of that. It was just stuff that came natural to us. One thing that we're doing, we're really trying to focus towards a lot of retailers with this stuff. So we're doing things where when you walk into a store, I talked about the contests and things like that,
Just
but
pop-up acoustic sessions.
so, we've already done some things like that.
See, it's like I have no good ideas.
So, but we're doing things like having listening lounge displays. So if it's a store that's a little bit larger, you can actually walk in and there's a chair, a record player, some headphones, and stack of whiskey. And so you can sit down for a minute, listen to a record, put on the headphones, and just read about the bourbon. We just want to create those moments. It helps the retailers, it helps the customer, it engages people. I loved doing that stuff when I was running a store. One thing that when I was running the store, I always looked for large interactive displays, and it was only the big guys, like only
That's the only ones who can afford them.
For the most part.
Yeah. I mean, it was really difficult. And so, I remember a few years ago talking to somebody, a distributor of ours, and he was like, you guys have a lot of opportunity with the music and the whiskey, like as far as the branding and the displays and stuff, like come up with something cool. And so once we started this process, I was like, can't wait. Like we're gonna come up with some really cool stuff. Like, we've even our basic metal rack is set up to hold bottles alongside albums. Things
no
like
way.
that.
That's
yeah.
cool.
So it's just all those little tie-ins that we have.
Well, you just got to figure out how to get into used record stores at this point, because if you get them to get an alcohol license, then you've got pretty much a good in right there.
You will definitely see us popping up at some record conventions and things like that.
Oh, I love it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's we said, look, we want to be the whiskey of the music world. We're not tied to one specific artist, right? We're tied to a love of music, a passion, and so we really want to tie in with those people, not just do the whiskey festivals and stuff, but also the music stuff too. But we'll be at Bourbon and Beyond this year.
I hope so.
I was about to say, well, you guys,
we'll be there.
We'll be there.
Okay, so we'll see you
Come
there.
see our talk. You'll be the only one there.
Maybe.
Hey, but if you do come out with a My Morning Jacket one, let me know. I'll buy a case of that.
We've tried.
There you go.
We tried.
We'll make a few phone calls. We'll see.
Because I know their vinyl sales are doing well.
Yeah, they do.
Do you consider yourself like an audiophile, especially when it comes to like the equipment and everything like that too?
I'm not, but the other people on our team are.
Are they? Okay. Well, I was genuinely curious because, when you're setting this up in stores, I just want to know, it's like, are you setting it up for, we're sitting here listening on $20 headphones, but obviously you can get $2,000 headphones. You can get a $100 record player. You can get $1,000 record player. So what are you trying to do to like make that experience happen and trying to find that middle ground for people?
Yeah, so we use the $1,000 record players and headphones to give away, and the less expensive ones to sit in the store unattended. So
smart idea.
You don't want to negate the sales of the bourbon.
It's like, and there goes all our bows and everything like that out the door. Yeah.
So that was definitely I immediately started thinking back to being a retailer. I was like, people are going to steal that.
Yeah, they're going to damage it. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. So definitely have to be careful with that. But,
Well,
you're talking about the audiophile thing. One of the things that's been fascinating, and I'm not sure if it's come to Louisville yet, but on the coast you're seeing it especially, is these listening bars now.
I have not heard of this.
So it started. It was a big thing in Japan.
I've seen the parties where people. What do you call them? Disco parties?
Oh,
well, that's a silent disco.
Silent disco.
I think that's maybe different then.
Yeah. So this is like a bar that's dimly lit, really, really high end audio equipment, records playing, nice cocktails, and it's just a really chill environment. It's that concept of sitting there listening to an album and drinking your whiskey, but in a more social setting. And those are popping up all over the place. In New York and California, obviously everything starts on the coast and kind of works its way inward. But, those types of places, it was like, wow, if we started looking at what we were doing here, it was like, man, this is really the whole album and the vinyl concept, like all of this is really just blowing up at this time. And like I said, it was funny because we would come up with a concept and then learn more about it afterwards. And it was like, man, we're onto something.
That's funny.
I think we should probably try do a test here. We get a listening bar. We got a bar.
We do.
Let's bring some vinyl records down and some headphones. And we'll see what happens.
We'll do the $20 headphones.
Yeah, we'll do that. we're gonna start off with Shaq Diesel and Crisscross.
That's right.
And see where we go from there.
I'll try to scrape together my Bush and Rage Against the Machine.
There we go. Ryan, this was so much fun, man.
Yeah,
it was truly, as you said,
the whiskeys are great.
The whiskey's great, and it was just personally this connection to have you on as a full circle moment, knowing that you were one of the people that set us down this path that we're on right now. And it's really truly fascinating, not only to be right here, but to be seeing here with you and your new career and what you're doing and doing everything with Three Chord. The whiskey's fantastic. I think the story is amazing. We've given rave reviews of Three Chord in the past. It's always been good. But knowing of what the new path that you're carving with how you are trying to differentiate yourself on the shelf of being more of like, as soon as you see this and you have that sort of nostalgia, or you have that pull where you're going to look at this and go like, yeah, I love music. Like this means something to me, versus some brand with some old dead guy on it. You're just not going to have any sort of connotation, right? Yeah. And so very awesome to see what you and the team are building over there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And, and thank you for remembering me, with the Dodge 52 and all of that kind of stuff. I'm big on kind of pinpointing those little connections from forever ago. And I love when other people do too. It's funny, just the twists and turns that life throws at you. And it's always nice to step back and realize like, wow, that one little thing like changed so much.
We could write a whole damn album about it. Make a great country album.
It might be. We'll turn the lyrics over to Taylor Swift and see if she can turn something into us.
Only if Shaq Diesel does this.
I'm into it. Maybe something with some pyrotechnics and some strobes. We're all in. But Ryan, dude, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for being on here. Before we sign off, though, give folks a sign off of where they can find out more about Three Chord, how they can find about you, everything like that.
Yeah, so threechordbourbon.com, at Three Chord Bourbon on socials. One thing that we're about to start doing, you'll start seeing on our socials as we kind of unveil this whole brand universe is, you'll be able to go on there and learn about the album cover that inspired this product, or who the person is behind it, or who the photographer is that took it, all that kind of stuff.
Sorry, that's not supposed to happen. Start that all over again real quick. I'll say just let people know who you are and where they can find you. And stuff like
so threechordbourbon.com, at Three Chord Bourbon on our socials. One thing that you'll be able to start seeing on there is as we unveil this whole brand universe, you'll be able to dig into, what album cover inspired the label, who is the artist on it, who's the photographer behind it, who's the designer, what went into the blend, all of that kind of stuff. We really want to have all these different layers of this brand story and want you to kind of become engaged and lose yourself in the whole universe.
Lose yourself. Mom's spaghetti.
That's your next shirt.
There you go. I love it, man. Well, congratulations on everything. Love to see not only just what Three Chord's doing, but congratulations in your own personal journey and your career and everything like that. It's always fun to see friends succeed and build themselves in this business and everything like that as well, too.
Thank you. Next time I'm going to have to bring you guys some Cozy Corner.
I know.
Don't tease me now.
I got halfway here. And I should have done that.
There was a store owner upstairs from Cheers from Memphis before you all came on, and they told me if they were from Memphis, and I was like,
"Did you bring some cozies?"
And I goes, "You bring some cozies," and they were like, "We did a 10 different rib challenge where we bought like from 10 different barbecue places in Memphis, and Cozy smoked everyone.
No way.
Yeah. And I was like,
Okay.
I'm not surprised. So if you're in Memphis, go to Cozy's.
The legend lives on. All right. Well, I love it. So Ryan, thank you again for being here. Make sure you follow Three Chord, get some of their products. I mean, I've tried 3 of the 4 here so far, all phenomenal. And I think as we sign off, I'm going to try how the 4th is here as well. But if you do like the show, you want to help support us, you want to share it with a friend, please do all that. But you can also follow Bourbon Pursuit on all the socials at Bourbon Pursuit. That's on Facebook and Instagram and even TikTok. And if you want to join our mailing list, you can do that as well. You never miss a new episode. You can go to bourbonpursuit.com and hit the sign up button right there. But with that, cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Toodles.